Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, welcome into another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI, coming to you from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator studio here in my humble abode. What a great weekend we had. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I hope everybody stopped and remembered why we were having a Memorial Day weekend. For all the people that have served, and I watched a lot of Band of Brothers over the weekend. I had just, my wife and I had the best time, and daughter. We were with our family. We're at my sister's house over in Delano Beach, and they've turned it into like a resort. Basically, it's unbelievably how nice it is, and just had a great time. It was great to be around a lot of people and have fun and just kind of decompress. So I'm ready. I'm fired up, ready to get back. I mean, I know that we're at the end of what the fun stuff that we like to talk about in terms of we get to football and basketball and stuff, and certainly baseball and softball. We're big fans there too. But we'll come up with some good stuff for you during the summer. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll do some of the things. Since I'm not going to be working for Gators Wire anymore, some of the things that I would do for them, I'll start doing for this show, and looking forward to it too. To be honest with you, taking a little. Life is going to be a little bit easier for me now. I won't be making as much money, but it'll be easier for me. Today on our show, I know that I said when we left that Coach Spurrier joined us Thursday, but actually he's got a lot going on this week. And we got Ross Dellenger, who's one of my favorites from Yahoo, their college sports editor, does a great job. He is in Destin at the SEC meetings, so hopefully he'll be able to join us. I mean, I know what it's like out there where you're kind of like, yeah, I'll try to be on, but hopefully he'll join us. And then I think Monday, Coach Spurrier will be back, and we'll have plenty to talk to him about. Thursday, well, I think Laura Rutledge is going to join us. I'm not 100% sure on that next Thursday. She was on vacation, or she would have been happy to come on today. But hopefully we'll get her. We'll have somebody on. That'll be a lot of fun. You know that. All right, let us get to our Process Service of Gainesville starting five, brought to you by, as always, Process Service of Gainesville and Scott Hart. Great people over there, and we appreciate them for being the sponsor of our starting five. Let us start with the biggest story to me of the weekend, really was what happened with softball winning that game. Now, I got to tell you, we're watching the game. It's me and my brother Tim, who was into it, and my wife, who was into it, and we're all watching the game. And but there are literally 30 people. There's a tent set up in the backyard and everything, and people kept coming up going, "What are you guys watching?" Well, we're watching softball, girls softball. Like, we like it. Leave us alone. And we didn't care. We were having a blast watching that game, and it was so much fun to watch. Got to give them a lot of credit. Give Tim Walton a ton of credit for what they've been able to do to get back out there to lovely Oklahoma City. And it was very tempting to maybe get in a car and take off and go out there. Then again, you got to remember how far it is. But anyway, they will be playing obviously tonight. If you're listening to the show Friday, you already know what they did. They did change the way they do it. And now I'm not saying they changed it this year, but they changed it since I've been going out there. But if you lose, you have to play the next day. You could be 2 and out. You could be out of that town quick. And Florida will be playing nothing but night games, so no matter how long they're out there. If they win, they play at this time for lose, but it's always going to be either the 7 or 9:30 slot. But the way they played out there was just awesome. I thought that was a very intense last game, no doubt about it. And I was very much into it. Let us get to number 2 on our Process Service of Gainesville starting five, which would be what baseball did, making the field. It was a little nervous for me. Now, I talked to people within the program who said, we knew they were going to get in. Yeah, I don't know if they give a warning or not. And, again, when they're trying to set up those, where the players are all, woo, we got in. I saw one where the guy was cussing. He was like, bah, 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 into the camera. But But just getting in was important. You just got to, if you can't win it, if you're not in it. And the bottom line is they did a great job of, when you look at what they did for the season, only one game over 500. If they didn't get in, I would have said, hey, that I would have written or talked about on this show how strength of schedule doesn't matter. But it did this year. And that's the problem, is you never know with the committee what it's going to do. Is it going to say, strength of schedule is all that matters, and how you did against RPI type team. And other times they'll go, yeah, but the eye test is what we look at. Whatever. Scott Strickland was on that committee, I believe, and they got in. So they're pretty. Who cares though? You have to leave the room when they talk. That. I always think it's good to have somebody on the committee versus not having them on the committee. Now, Scott was on the college football committee when it didn't matter for Florida. And with baseball, does he have any influence on it? I don't know. He's there. They see him. He's the Gator guy. I don't know if it did or not, but they were in. They weren't even close enough. I mean, they weren't among the last four in. They were in. They were the number 1, number 3 seed just because of the schedule they played. And that they won a lot of those games. That series against Georgia. Don't forget, Georgia is a national seed. Florida beat them 2 out of 3. Texas A&M beat them 2 out of 3. So, I mean, they won a lot of good games, but look, I don't think this team's going anywhere, and I don't think you do either. Let me go back to softball. I don't think softball is going deep into this tournament either, only because they don't have a dominant pitcher. And anybody will tell you that you have to have a dominant pitcher to win in Oklahoma City. Now, I do think softball is changing and evolving into more of a slugger's game, and people are hitting a lot of home runs, and you get more 7-4 scores than you used to get 2-1 scores. But you still need a dominant pitcher. However, they're there. They're there. Baseball is there. It's something for us to watch. We'll enjoy it. We'll have fun. We'll be rooting hard for the Gators. I'm not saying they're not going to win it. They're not going to win anything. They're not going to win a game. I'm just saying I'm not optimistic because I've been to these things. Florida usually is not very good playing regionals on the road under Sully. I think they're 0-4 or 1-4. They won one game in Lubbock. I don't. It's just that it's here. This Nebraska team they're going against has a great pitcher. I think he's 9-0. Brett Sears is his name. And then they got one guy that's got to hit a bunch of homers. Hit 6 homers in the conference tournament. Carone, I think it's pronounced. Anyway, he's the only guy that's got double-figure homers. So they don't hit a lot of homers. It's a bandbox out there. It's one of those places where deep fly balls get out of the park. So, like when Jeff is always, when he's talking on the radio and he's saying, boy, the wind's blowing out, that's good for the Gators. I'm like, why is it good for the Gators? A guy can hit a pop fly and get it out that usually wouldn't hit a homer for the other team too, so. But I think the fact that it is a small stadium may help Florida because, they're always swinging for the fences. We know that. That's probably one of their biggest liabilities. But we'll see how they do there. In Stillwater, we looked it up yesterday. Well, Jeff looked it up the first day. It's the 10th biggest town in Oklahoma. And then we couldn't only name 3 of the other ones, so we had to look them up, like Enid. And Moore. I've been to Moore. Moore's a suburb basically of Oklahoma City. Norman's one of them. We got Norman. But anyway, there's not a lot to do out there. Let's just put it that way. All right, let's get to number 3 in our process service of Gainesville starting 5. And I hated to see lacrosse go out the way it did. I did watch that over the weekend. And, obviously it's a 10-9 game. When they have a weather delay, and did it have an effect? Did one team handle better than the other? I mean, you look at what happened. They came out and scored real quick, their opponent, and Florida was not able to respond. But it was a great year for Mandy O'Leary and her players. I loved watching them play. I haven't seen a lot of their games this year. I'll watch lacrosse a little bit, Florida lacrosse. Now, I'm not going to watch Duke and Harvard, I mean, but Florida lacrosse, I'll watch it, and I do watch it, and they're good. And watching how hard they played and how gritty they played, I became a real big fan. I already was a fan of Mandy's. She's been really good to me over the years. And anyway, you hate to see it end that way, though, when you get all the way to the semifinals. This is what we talked about the other day. The deeper you go, the harder it is to lose. You saw those Baylor girls crying their eyes out after that game, which ended their season. And I felt, you felt for them. It's just the way it is, though. Like if you lose in the first round, you're not crying. You shouldn't be crying. You should be mad. You should be disappointed. If you were the big underdog, you should probably just go, well, we were here. We got here. But the deeper you go, man, the harder it is. The harder it is to lose. So congratulations to a wonderful season in lacrosse. Speaking of a team that had a tough way to go out, that is the golf team. JC Deacon, they did such a great job of getting back into position to be in the match play. And on, I guess that would have been on Saturday, right? Saturday is when they played terrible. Sunday, they played great. And then Monday, unfortunately, just did not finish strong. They had 2 double bogeys at the end. And literally, if those are 2 pars, they're in. They're in the match play. But they're 2 double bogeys, and that really hurt them. But this is another team that went a little further than we thought they would. You always want everybody to, this is a program where it's an everything school and you want national championships and everything. But when you get that far, you're to be congratulated. You're to be patted on the back. Great job. Great job. Thank you very much for your service. You did good. You didn't do as good as we hoped, but you probably did better than you thought. Well, you might. I'm not saying specifically any team, but getting into the Final Four or getting into in Florida's case, they were in the last cut, getting that far, and I'm talking about golf, is always an achievement. And you should be happy. You're not going to be happy that day, but at some point, you'll sit back and think about it and go, we did pretty good. I told you guys, I knew this team wasn't going to win it all, but the fact that they got as far as they did and kept fighting and scrapping to do it, I'm proud of them. So there they have the Pat Dooley seal of approval. I'm sure that'll change their whole lives. All right, and finally, number 5 on our process service of Gainesville starting 5. This was the other day, but Scotty Scheffler charges dropped. As you looked at, this was one of those things where the first reaction for, I think, a lot of people, including somebody who lives in this house, was very negative towards Scotty Scheffler and rooting against him. And, as the details began to come out, no, look, he had a really good lawyer who knew what he was doing, had a connection with the cops there. The cop, obviously had been in trouble before, wasn't wearing his body cam, had done donuts with a person in his car that wasn't an officer. All that, he hadn't done anything egregious, but the bottom line is there was some sketchy stuff there. And when they looked at everything what they did have of cameras, it really wasn't that big a deal. It just wasn't. I didn't think it was anyway, but the charges are all dropped, and Scheffler saying no animosity towards anybody, no animosity towards the officer. Let's just move on. But it cost him a PGA championship. I'll be convinced of that till the day I die. Because the next day when he went out there, that day, the day it happened, he played fine, he played great. And I think it was adrenaline and just then the next day he had plenty of time to talk and think about it and respond to it and everything. And when I think, what did he shoot, 78 or something? And that was it. Then he went and shot, I think, 66 the final. Anyway, that's a long time ago. All right. But anyway, that did get dropped. All right. We'll take a break after the first segment there. And when we come back, Ross Dellenger is going to join us. Of course, he is the college football writer for Yahoo and does a great job. He wrote a piece the other day that I just went, wow, now I get it. And then I kept reading and I go, no, maybe I don't get it. Oh, do it. I'll find out if I get it when we get them on. We'll be back with more here on another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios.
Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPS and FAPS. And he has been a part of the community for almost 2 decades. Need service? Call Process Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartgators, that's G8TR, at yahoo.com. And make sure you ask about the paralegal legal secretary bonus program.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life, and the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. Great pleasure to bring on Ross Dellenger from Yahoo, who does a great job covering college football. And man, I will say this, Ross, you're in Destin, one of my favorite places. I know you're out at the beach the whole time, and then every once in a while you wander in, but I don't envy that what you're having to cover, and none of it has to do with actually playing of football games.
It doesn't. I tell people often that I got in this to cover touchdowns and field goals, and instead I'm covering congressional hearings and court litigation. But that's what it is right now in college athletics. And it's a transformative and evolving time, and you're kind of covering history. So as much as I like to cover the games aren't as important right now, obviously, or even the depth charts and all of the other things, as all this like transformation that's happening.
Well, I told you, I thought it was a great story that you did on the NIL, and with this settlement that's come through. You talked to a lot of people to get this story on yahoo.com, and it's a great story. It will explain things a little bit better, but even then, I heard Pete Thamel talking about this. He goes, this is like a Jeopardy. It's like you have to put your questions in the form of question or answers in the form of questions, because nobody really seems to know what's going on.
Yeah, there is. I think the story of these meetings here in Destin is that there really isn't a story, because we don't have answers and we don't have clarity on pretty much anything when it comes to the future of college athletics and the future model of college athletics. So it's funny, I'm writing kind of a wrap up for later today, just kind of on the week of what we learned. And I don't know that we learned a whole lot. I'm hoping after the president's break in a few hours that we'll learn maybe a little bit more, but I'm not optimistic that will be the case. There's just still so many questions around. Obviously, it starts at the granular level, which is probably roster size, football roster size, and all the roster limits happening. And then you might go up the tree, so to speak, and you go to the future of collectives in their role, and then further up the tree, maybe the biggest question is the how you distribute the revenue to athletes while potentially having to satisfy Title IX requirements that would require, most say, especially attorneys say, the equal distribution of that revenue to men and women athletes. So, in none of that, we really don't have any answers to much of that. I think that the roster limits will be very close to 85, if not 85. That is quite clear. I think that, the collectives will still exist, especially if you have to follow Title IX and split your revenue 50-50. So that's kind of, but all of it's just pretty murky.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You talked about the roster limits, and I know that was a big topic of conversation for a couple of days up there. And basically, coaches coming out and going, walk-ons are part of college football. Why are we going to take those away? Is that what's going to happen? I mean, do you see that happening where you can't be a walk-on anymore?
I do. Yeah, that's and I think people are. I understand where people are frustrated by this. I think a lot of people don't understand why this is happening. Why do you have to cut walk-ons? And it does get a little complicated, but as part of the settlement, they're eliminating scholarship restrictions, limitations, caps, whatever you want to call them. I mean, each sport NCAA sport has a scholarship cap, and they're getting rid of those to, number one, prevent future lawsuits, antitrust lawsuits. Any restrictions on athletes would prevent, would lead potentially to more lawsuits. So that's why they're getting rid of the scholarships, and that does have an impact on the roster situation. So while eliminating the scholarship caps, they are putting roster caps in, because that is more defensible, I think, from a legal perspective. So they're adding roster limits to each sport, which means if you don't have a scholarship limit and you have a roster limit, you can give out scholarships to everybody on your roster, however many roster spots there are. If you have 120, it's around 110 to 20 that football has on its roster, but it has an 85 cap of scholarship cap. Well, if you remove that cap, then conceivably you'd have 120 players on scholarship, which for competitive purposes schools would do in recruiting and such. And that means that you would have to add 30 to 40 additional scholarships for football, which means you have to turn around and add 30 to 40 more scholarships for women athletes to satisfy Title IX. So to prevent that from happening, to avoid that, and to save costs, right? 40 players, 40 walk-ons, that's 40 mouths to feed and medical expenses to pay for. You would eliminate the walk-ons by making a roster of 85, which is the scholarship maximum. So that's kind of the explanation of why they're doing it. Right. There's a lot of people, coaches chiefly among them, that don't agree.
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting though, and it's like I ran into a guy yesterday, and we were talking about NIL and everything. Is NIL is going to kill college football? NIL is going to, I've heard that from multiple people. I'm not going to, I don't know if I want to. I'm going. You're going to watch the games. You're going to watch the games. Yeah, NIL. Nobody likes it. I know. I understand. Who likes it? The players love it, but really, we should love it because it's going to keep good players in the game longer.
Yeah, well, that's number one, right? We've seen that benefit. We've seen, I think I can't remember the exact numbers, but every year for 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years, the underclassmen, college underclassmen, enrolling or leaving for the NFL early, escalated, and I think it hit like a high maybe 4 or 5 years ago of over 100 underclassmen entering the NFL draft early. And we've seen that the last couple of years. Big surprise, right? That has plummeted. I think it was cut in half this past year. And that's because those players obviously are earning compensation in college and deciding to stay. And that has been a huge perk of NIL. I think another really big perk of NIL has been women's athletics. The women athletes oftentimes are earning what they might called true NIL, not necessarily collective NIL salaries, all that stuff. They are earning true NIL. You see some of the stars of the women's basketball, like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, Libby Dunn as a gymnast, and
Trinity Thomas
some
from
of
here.
the other. Yeah, there you go. And so you're seeing them kind of shine because they have that NIL, they have that attention, spotlight's more on them. So there has been perks to this evil that is NIL.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's like what I told this guy. I said, he goes, I said, well, you're not going to watch any sports? He goes, oh, I love gymnastics. I go, they're making more than the football players.
Mm.
I mean, it's just whether you set the deal with it, and you either evolve or you get out of the way. Ross Dellenger coming to you live from Destin, Florida, and where the SEC meetings are going on, and he's coming to you on the Big Mills Cheesesteaks Zoom line. I want to ask you about one other thing before we play yes, no, where, maybe, and let you get out of here because I know you got a lot of work to do. But the rule, or it hasn't been passed completely yet, but it seems like it's got momentum about wearing potential patches, advertising patches on the uniforms. Is it going to become like NASCAR, where it's just that they're all over you, and they start. I like that 44 car.
I think that eventually we may see that, maybe not to that extent where a player's jerseys are covered from top to bottom, but I think we will see eventually a few patches. I think before that, we'll see corporate sponsorships on the football field, logos on the football field, which have previously been prohibited, restricted. Schools have been prohibited in doing that unless the field was unless the corporate sponsor owned the naming rights of the field,
Right.
or the stadium. But now the rules committee is going to meet next week, and almost assuredly, according to administrators here in Destin, going to lift that and allow schools to put logos on the field. And I think they will discuss the jersey patches. I do not expect that that's not as far along as the logos on the field. But I think that's probably within 3 to 4 years away from happening for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the revenue stream, and it just keeps adding. It just keeps getting bigger. It's just like with TV. The money's only going to increase because there's more streaming networks, and they're getting involved in it. So I think the money's just going to continue to go up. It's not going to go down.
No, they're not. You can do two things, right? To generate, I should say, you can generate more revenue, right? With these streams that we're talking about, or you can reduce expenses. And college athletics is not fond of reducing expenses.
No, they're not. It's going to be an interesting football season. We'll get to that. I know at some point there will be talk about football games. Let's go ahead and quickly do yes, no, where. Maybe it is brought to you by Big Mills Cheesesteaks, street dining done the right way, sponsors of the Bob Dooley Invitational, and great friends of ours, Keith Miller over there. Let's get to number one. You have to answer yes, no, where. Maybe you're allowed to expand on it too. By 5 years from now, the playoffs will have expanded again.
Yes, in the way that I think the 2026 and beyond playoff isn't set, right? We know it can be 12 or 14. I'm leaning toward it probably being 14, so that's why I would answer yes to that. And that deal goes through, I think it's 2031 maybe. So yeah, in 5 years, I think we'll probably be dealing with a 14-team playoff.
Yeah. Are you excited about the 12 team?
I am. I love the 12-team format.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Rewards conference champions. You got the first round at home. Very exciting.
I think there'll be a 9-3 team in there. They'll, somewhere it'll be somebody.
Oh yeah.
Like if Florida went 9-3, I think they'd get in because of the schedule they've got.
The schedule. Yeah, it depends. Obviously, it depends on some other things that happen in the ACC or Big 12. But there's no doubt that at least every other year there'll be a 3-loss SEC or Big 10 team in the playoff, I would imagine.
All right, number 2 on yes, no, where, maybe. See, we're keeping a football theme here. Georgia is an early 13-point favorite over Clemson in Atlanta in the opening game. Who do you got there? Who would you gamble on there? I know we don't endorse gambling, but who would you bet on that?
Yeah, that's a big spread for me. Almost 2 touchdowns. I would take Clemson to not to win, but to cover that.
Yeah. In fact, I saw Florida's 3.5-point dog to Miami in the Swamp, and I'm like, I guess people think Miami's a little better than they maybe. We'll see. All right, number 3 on yes, no, where, maybe with Ross Dellenger from Yahoo. Sports does a great job for them. You really got to read him to understand what's going on with all this stuff. And I, again, highly encourage people to go back and read the piece he did a couple days ago on the NIL and the evolvement of the NIL, because it's amazing what is going on there, and the collectives and how the collectives aren't going away. They're still going to be there. There's a lot of money going on around here, believe it or not. All right, number 3 on yes, no, where, maybe. Ross, Florida makes a bowl game this year.
Yes, despite the schedule.
Yeah, I think the schedule's hard, but it's not harder than last year's. I mean, you're opening with Miami. Yeah. Okay, you open with Utah at Utah last year, where they never lose.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I now those last five are just about as tough of a 5-game slate I've seen though in college athletics. Hopefully for the Gators that they get to those last 5 games with at least at 6-1 or better maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've said they've got to start 5-0, even though there's some good teams there. They still have to start 5-0 because otherwise it's going to be tough sledding down the roost there. Hey, Ross, always great talking to you. Thanks for taking time out from Destin. I was kidding about you going to the beach a lot. I know when you guys are out there, all you do is sit in lobbies. You don't get tan. You get whiter, in fact, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I did get to Crab Island on Sunday before this all started, so that was nice.
I love Crab Island. That's a great place to go out there. It's weird. It's different. It's different. There's no doubt about it. Ross, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate you so much. We'll be back with more. Another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios right after this break.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Another Duly Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444. Okay, welcome back to another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. We appreciate them as sponsors. And of course, they were great sponsors of our golf tournament as well as many of the people that are on this list as we go to episode 3 or section 3 or area 3. The third thing. And so to do 3 things, we do it on the third thing. And of course, as you know, Hesser and Kipke is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of family law and workers' compensation. If you're a loyal listener of this show, and you should be, you know who we are by now. If not, Google the firm, check out the reviews, and hear what our clients have to say. Ken and Jennifer can be reached 24/7 via call or text at 352-339-9920. That's 352-339-9920. Hesser and Kipke. Always love doing the Hesser and Kipke 3 things. And we'll start out today with the news that we got the other day that Walter Clayton is coming back. And the funny thing is, everybody says, well, yeah, we knew he was going to come back. Everybody knew he was going to come back. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. When he announces, I'll say, okay. And he's going to only come back to Florida. Okay, let's just see. But to get him and Will Richard back certainly is a good boost for this team. And they were hoping for that. Still not sure about the point guard situation. I think their plan is that Aberdeen takes it over at some point. But Walter is obviously going to come back and do that and try to be a point guard as well. And, you go, wow, the Gators, they're going to be awesome next year and having these guys back. But, a lot of guys are coming back. I know Reed Shepherd didn't. I know some Kentucky's. I don't know. I think Reed Shepherd comes back if Calipari stays at Kentucky, but he didn't. And then there are guys certainly declaring for the draft. But think about this. They also announced yesterday that Mark Sears from Alabama is coming back. I'm like, no, he's trouble. Of course, Florida did whip them twice this year, but he is trouble. And, Caleb Love coming back at Arizona. And this is kind of the whole look. I don't want to start an NBA career where I have to go to Europe when I can make that kind of money or similar money or enough money to get a good enough NIL deal and stay in school and keep working towards my degree and not have to learn a new language or anything like that. I get why you're going to see a lot of this. And I think for guys like Will Richard and Walter Clayton, this is a great chance to, kind of finish out as a big heroes at the University of Florida. Get a little deeper in the tournament this year. Get a little, and Todd talked about this last week about how they needed to get better seeding, and the best way to get better seeding is win more games. So I mean, they know what they need to do. They need to get a higher seed so they don't get stuck with a Colorado in a game like that. Now, would it make difference? You can still lose to a lower seed team. I know that, but that's what their goal is anyway. I kind of lost track there for a minute. All right. So anyway, that is number one. Number two, it appears we're heading to a Celtics Mavericks final. And I'm now, again, I give a lot of credit to the Timberwolves, not just keeling over. And they went out and played hard and did get one win. One more than the opponent the Celtics got. But I'm trying to figure out, Al Horford the other night had 7 3-pointers, which was the most for somebody his age ever has made. And I love Al Horford, that, and I want him to get a ring. But there's also, look, my Celtics hatred goes back a long way, and I've kind of once Al got there, I kind of let it go. But now they're going to be in a series with the Mavs, it appears. Now, I will say this. If it's Boston and the Timberwolves, if somehow that happens, I don't think it will. I'll root for Boston then. But I think I'm going to root for the Mavs. I'm sorry. I like a lot of guys on their team, but it is interesting. Unfortunately, it hadn't been a very good series. Some of the games have been good, especially in the other series. But it just hasn't been compelling. In fact, I had no idea what was going on in it for a while because I was caught up in having a good time and in softball. So anyway, number 3 on our Hesser and Kipke 3 things, I did want to talk about the passing of 2 giant people. That's the best way to put it, I guess. And that would be Bill Walton, who was 7 foot, 6'11", however tall he was, and was one of them. And just to hear all the great Bill Walton stories and all the great things he did for people, I didn't get the chance to meet him. I regret that. I did get to see Michael Jordan play. I have played Augusta. I've done all these things on my bucket list, but sometimes you can have a retrospective bucket list. And I was never a Bill Walton fan because Bill Walton played for UCLA and they won everything, and I didn't like that. And then he went to the Celtics. So I was never a fan. And as an announcer, sometimes he'd go off on these tangents, and I just want to watch the game. But that's me. But then you hear about all the great things he did, and you see some of the stuff he did, and now you go back and go, I was an idiot. I should have been a huge Bill Walton fan. And I had already realized that when I watched I'm the Luckiest Guy in the World, which was series that they did on the 30 for 30 series they did on ESPN. It was unbelievable. It was so good. And I became a Bill Walton fan just in time for him to pass away, which was just tragic and terrible. And obviously had to deal with cancer. And I'll be curious to find out exactly find more detail. I'm always curious about those things. The other one was David Lamb. And I did want to mention his passing over the weekend as well. David, I worked for David. I worked with David. I worked against David. We knew each other very well, but we had a little falling out. And the falling out, I'll just tell you the truth, was the Super Bowl, where he ended up getting fired from the paper because he sold his Super Bowl tickets, and there were a couple other things. And they brought me in under the bright lights, and I said, I am not lying. He's not a good enough friend for me to lie for. He's just somebody I work with. And I told them when they asked questions, I gave honest answers, and that got him fired. So David and I didn't speak a whole lot after that. And I feel bad about it. And I feel bad that I had to do that, but I was not going to lie for him. And I still think I'm right about that. David still went on, had a great life. And let me tell you what, he taught me a lot about being about coaches and coaches' wives and getting to know people like that, and where you go to look for sources. David Lamb at one point had, and I'm not going to tell you the coach because his family has threatened to sue me before, but there was one coach he had nailed. He had with pictures of something happening. One day, get me on the street and I'll tell you, or at the golf course, okay? But he had it, and he was getting ready to publish, and that coach threatened him, and he backed off. I wish he had published it. Would have been interesting. Anyway, but David Lamb was a giant. He really was a giant, and in more ways than one. I think the fact that man got to 78 is a miracle. He was a smoker. Then he smoked cigars. He was a cigarette smoker. Then he smoked cigars. Then at the end, he was just chewing on that cigar. And I can't think even still that's good for you. And look, I'm a guy, I've never smoked, but I've dipped. I've done things that are not good for you. We all have done things that aren't good for you. But David was also, really overweight, and as was I. And now I'm trying to get back down. But the thing about David is he was, in his heart, he was a good person. And I will say that. He, as I said, he helped me in a lot of ways. And I appreciated him. And I was very, very sad to see that he had passed away. In fact, I keep saying we keep getting these oh no moments. Bill Walton was an oh no moment. And David Lamb was too. It's like, oh no. Because you read it and you're like, oh. And then you're going, is this somebody hacked somebody's Twitter? Let me see it in multiple accounts before we'll do it. But anyway, rest in peace, Bill. Rest in peace, David. And appreciate all of you for everything you did for your sports. All right, let us get to our Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend. And the Gator of the weekend, I'm going to go with Mia Williams. And that's because Mia Williams, I think, had and if you remember back at the SEC tournament, where she had the 2 3-run homers that really were the impetus for them winning that. Well, the 2-run homer she hit on Sunday, and then the diving catch on a line drive that I thought I said, oh, that's a hit. And they're going to have, bases loaded or whatever. I can't remember the situation. Very late in that game. Huge play on that play. So Mia Williams, I'm going to mention who your dad is. I don't think it matters. No, but it does matter. But anyway, it is funny. She's already played more games in college than he has, and she's only a freshman. He only played 20. She's played, well, they've won 51. So what are they? 70 games, almost close to 70 games. It's a grind, man, but happy for him. Really looking forward to tonight and maybe tomorrow night. So anyway, Mia Williams is our Adams Ribco Gator of the weekend. And I appreciate Adam over there at Adams Ribs for being a big factor in my life. Another factor in my life, Leonardo's at Millhopper. So let's get to the quick picks. And I'm just going to make this very simple. Is baseball playing on Sunday? That's a simple Leonardo's at Millhopper quick pick. Is baseball playing Sunday? Now, your brain is kind of maybe getting confused. Okay, well, what do they have to do? Well, they have to win one. I don't think they have to win two to play on Sunday, but they have to win at least one to play on Sunday. Because you would play Friday and then again Saturday. You might have to play a second game Saturday, though. So the question is very simple. Are the Gators playing on Sunday? You go figure it out. You have Google, right? You can figure it out. Just yes or no. That's all I need to know. And that will make Kyle Cohen over at Leonardo's very happy just to know that you and we're getting close to I know that I did send the package out to Lee, who won the last one and a couple weeks ago. Hopefully he got it. I haven't had one that didn't go through yet. On these, they always go. There's been some other things that didn't show up places, but anyway, so that's our Leonardo's at Millhopper quick pick. Let's do this, that, and the other. As always, brought to you by Ironwood Golf Course, home of the Bob Dooley Invitational. Hopefully it'll be the home next year again. We're definitely doing a 30th one if Ironwood's still going. And I will say this, I was out there yesterday. They've got brand new tee markers, which I knew they were getting in. I was hoping they'd come in for the tournament. They didn't, but still, it makes a huge difference in the course. They're redoing the putting green because if you're out there, you know the struggles they've been having. That the other greens look great right now. It's a great place to play golf, and it's our public golf course, man. And so, look, I'm a big proponent of Ironwood because I believe that side of the city needs a golf course, needs a place to go, a recreation go. It's pretty much, I would say, well, we only have 4 golf courses. Now, I know they're building them somewhere, and we'll see. And they're supposed to open up the country club, but Ironwood's the only place where I really see any, or I don't want to say any minorities play, but a multiple minorities play. And that you need that on that side of town. You need it's the most beautiful place. I love it when you're out there driving around the course and the deer are coming up to you and the turkeys and it's just the birds are unbelievable. I saw an osprey out there that I literally, it caught my breath. It was so big. Anyway, Ironwood Golf Course. I was just trying to get my lecture in. All right, Ironwood Golf Course brought to you by Dar Shackal Insurance, and who are good friends as well. And of course, as always, brought to you by Ballyhoo Grill. Well, they brought the gator tail out for the Bob Dooley Invitational and supplied the wings for the party the night before. So this, that, and the other. I love let's make it this way. I loved playing computer games. I always do. I still play them on my phone all the time. I have a football game. I can't think of the name of it. It's a Retro Bowl. Yeah. Playing that right now. But I do love them. And at one point, I had the EA Sports, the college football game. I loved it. And even though the team that I had to play with was 07 Tebow, and they didn't know if Tebow could throw, so he wasn't a good passer. So my team wasn't very good when I played Florida. Anyway, I loved it. That is, I was excited to hear, like a lot of people who are going to make some money off of it, that not only are we having these reparations for these athletes who had their name, image, and likeness used for other things, but that they're coming out with a new game. And I was excited when I saw it. And then I said, well, it's pretty cool, but you don't have a PS anymore. You don't have a PlayStation. Somebody just rang my doorbell, and we'll just have to see who it is. It could be Mr. Robinson. You never know. Okay, and then the other is that I've been watching these guys coming on Twitter all the time, and they're saying, and in fact, The Athletic just did a big story. I played for 2 hours, and here's my thoughts on the game and everything. And I know it's a big deal for a lot of people, but really, just I don't know. It just seems like it's getting too much. They must love this over at EA Sports. People are playing their own. I mean, I'm sure those games were sent to them. But now I will say this, if somebody brings me a PlayStation and hooks it up here and shows me how it works, I'll buy the game. I would like to play it, but it's kind of like to play the game now. And if you have Florida, you're going, oh God, they're not very good. I don't know, but Graham Mertz will probably light it up though. All right, that is this, that, and the other. Kind of a weird one, obviously, for today. Brought to you again by Ironwood, by Ballyhoo, by Dar Shakow Insurance. Let's get to our Swamp Restaurant games of the weekend. Love the boys over there. And of course, if you go over there, there's all kinds of drink specials and there's a lot going on this weekend. You may be there late, which I know people like to stay there late at the Swamp and have a good time, but you may have to be there late because softball tonight, if you're going, is at 9:30, that's what they're advertising it as out there in Oklahoma City. But you all know what happens in Oklahoma City. There's rain delays, there's lightning delays, there's tornado delays, there is games that go extra innings. The games are slower because they have more commercials in between them. So you end up with games that they say are going to start at 9:30. They don't. They don't start at 9:30. They start at 9:45. Anyway, Florida will be playing at night, like I said earlier, the whole weekend. So they're all on ESPN, so you ought to be able to enjoy it. Just you don't have to worry about the Gators till nighttime. And no matter what happens, win, lose, nighttime for the Gators. But it does start at noon today. It starts at noon today, and so there'll be games at noon. I think both the first 2 days, and go all day. Baseball, their game Friday night is at 3:00 against Nebraska. It's only on the Plus, so luckily I get the Plus, so I'm gonna be watching it. But it's only on that, and then we'll have to see. A lot of this stuff is going to go with the regionals, like it did in softball. Going to go by the depending on what TV wants, and what they'll decide. Going into it. Once they set up the first round, then they go from there. Now with the College World Series out in Oklahoma City, they can go ahead and schedule it. Let's get to the NBA. Saturday, Minnesota at Dallas. Dallas is up 2-1, 3-1. Sorry, that'll be a good game. I'm interested in watching it. And then, of course, that's at 8:30. By the way, on TNT. So that'll be interesting to watch that. I think that's the only thing we have. There's golf is going to be on, and there's always stuff to watch. We always find stuff to watch, but the main thing is going to be Gator baseball and Gator softball for a lot of you people. I know that, and we'll have fun with it. Okay, that is going to do it for our show. Appreciate everybody for listening. Appreciate Zach for doing a wonderful job of producing. We'll be back with another show Monday with Coach Spurrier. Till then, I am Pat Dooley. I am deep way back, and I am out of here.